I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Okay, hello everybody. Just wanted to shout out, I don't know how you could miss it because I put it on every single social media channel I have, but my name was in Seattle Magazine. And shout out to Rob Smith. He was, I think, our third guest, and he referenced my name in the podcast. It was in part of a different article. The article wasn't about me, but it was very, very fun to see my name in print. So if you haven't checked out the latest edition of Seattle Magazine, it comes out once a month. Definitely pick that up and support Rob Smith. So thank you. And we're going to dive right into the guests we have today. We have Cate Goethals with me today. Hi, Cate.
Hey, Rachel.
So we met, we were just talking 5 years ago. My boss at the time, Emily Parker, she was the second guest. She called me into her office and said, I'm going to get you a leadership coach. To which my fragile little ego was like, you don't think I'm a good leader? I was like, what do you mean I need coaching? And then I slept on it and was like, wait, I think she's investing in me. So you were my leadership coach in 2019, and that was such a fun time. I appreciate that. Did you have fun?
I did have fun. You're a very formidable client.
Oh, hey, thank you. I appreciate that. But the reason why I wanted to have you on is because you are just such a force, and kind of, would you say that kind of a behind the scenes force? Because I feel like you have your hands in all these different buckets and these big businesses and these powerful people, but not everybody kind of has heard of you publicly. So you're the founder of Better Boards Initiative, the founder and director of the Women Board Director Program at UW. And you're an executive coach. So you're focused on women on the cusp, entering their next act, women that are sitting on boards or want to be sitting on boards and wanting to make a bigger impact. And then you also personally, you sit on the board of Sound Generations. Did I get that right?
Yes.
So Better Boards Initiative, I was going to explain it, but I think it's actually going to be better if you explain it. And not everybody maybe on the podcast is familiar. Can you say a little bit more about what that is and why you started it and why you're passionate about it?
Well, I think I'll begin by saying a little bit about me.
Yeah.
I am passionate about particularly getting women into more leadership positions in government, in business, everywhere.
Okay, me
I think
too.
the world would be a much, much better place.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything I've done really for the past 20 years has surrounded diversifying leadership. And so I started with a Women at the Top course at the UW. Believe it or not, there weren't any women in leadership classes at Foster in 2005.
Okay.
And the students were saying, where are the female leaders? And so I'm like, okay, I'll start a class and show you some.
Good for you. Cool.
And so through that, I got to know all the cool women in town who had CEO positions and inspired, I think, women ever since. I still teach that MBA class. Cool. I now do an undergrad version of the class. And I, in 2015, started a program. I actually started some research. It was like everybody was saying, or a lot of statistical company data was showing, that companies with at least one woman on their board did better on a number of business measures. And so I was like, why is that? And so we interviewed 100 board directors and said, do women contribute differently? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, most we interviewed half men, half women, and most said, yes, they do contribute differently. And the answers are probably not that surprising. They focus more on people. They look to the long term rather than just the quick win. And I think this is going to come up later in the podcast. They also are more focused on avoiding conflicts of interest, of making sure things are done in the right and above board way.
Yeah. So the Better Boards Initiative was created. So you did that survey.
I did that first survey, and then we did another one in 2019 looking at diversifying boards in other ways.
Yeah. Very cool. And I'm sure you've seen the impact of that. That's been probably very rewarding to see kind of changing boards.
It is. Yeah, it is. However, boards have kind of hit a standstill. They've slowed down in their appointment of women and...
Really?
Yeah. and different candidates. And there's been some pushback on that.
It's like, I know we have to get in the news here in a second, but it's kind of like a pendulum swing of we were all about diversifying and getting women on boards. And now people are kind of like, wait, well, I don't know about, what do we really, like, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I talked to a guy who runs a Fortune 500 board, and he's getting advice not to appoint more women. He's like, we already have some women.
Oh, boy.
And he said it's a generational issue, he said. It's not something we can solve. It's something for my children to solve.
Wow, that fills me with rage. We did the...
it filled me with rage.
You spoke at an event, the Women Who Lead on Boards event. And I remember from that panel discussion, this is years ago, but it stood out to me. There was a woman saying that when you're one woman on a board, you are the one woman on the board and you represent women. And it's like, well, let's ask the woman on the board, right? And then I think she said when there's two, you both kind of represent it. But once there's three, she said three is kind of a magical number and that you are just a board member and you represent a board member's opinion. You're not speaking for all women. Is that, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I think people would say if there's one woman on a board, people don't turn to her and say, is that what women think? People don't hear her.
Yeah. That's even sadder. But yeah.
They need some amplification or oftentimes if you're the only, which is a tough situation, you'll have to come up with a strategy to get things done outside of the main conversation.
Yeah. Okay, well, throughout the program today, we're going to have a slight lean on boards, I think, with some of these stories, because I know a lot of your clients serve on boards or are about to serve on boards. So I think I'm excited to hear your perspective on some of these. So the 5 stories we have today. Sue Bird joins the Storm Ownership Group. Amazon's Q1 revenue report came out and, shocker, they're doing great. Number 3, REI reports a loss. They're not doing great. And then number 4, our story is Doxo, a Seattle company, is being sued by FTC. If you listen to this podcast, you know that I love a business fraud story or alleged fraud, I should say. And then the last story is Downtown Properties owe $16 million for the waterfront project. And we're going to dive into that. So you ready to get going?
I am.
Okay. So the first story is Sue Bird, a well-decorated WNBA player here in Seattle. She's joining the Storm Ownership Group. The ownership group is called Force 10 Hoops. And that ownership group includes Lisa Brummel, Ginny Gilder, and Dawn Trudeau. So 3 different women, and Sue will be the 4th woman. If you listen to the episode with John Scholes, we talked about how they have that new $64 million training facility opening. And that news came out that it just opened. And then a week later, we've got Sue Bird coming on to the ownership. This isn't Sue Bird's first dabble in the corporate world and companies. She has a production company with Megan Rapinoe called A Touch More. She has a media and commerce company called Together alongside other co-founders. And she's also a part owner of Gotham FC, another NWSL soccer team. And then the last note on this is that the Storm is the highest valued team in the WNBA, valued at about $150 million. And I love this fact, similar to when we were talking about the Reign, when that was first sold and then just recently bought, the difference in pricing. So it was purchased in 2008 from these 3 women for $10 million. And again, it's valued at $150 million now. So we love to see that. So your thoughts on having 4 co-owners? You don't really typically see 4 CEOs, but you do see boards leading companies. So do you think, and 4 women owners, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that there are 4 women owners. I think we were talking beforehand of the WNBA. 9 of 12 teams are owned by a single man.
Wow. Okay.
And the audience, we were saying 60% male, which is interesting. I didn't realize that earlier. But I think it's amazing. And to have Sue Bird on there, that can only heighten the Storm's profile.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I was
so
asking,
recognized.
Your whole thing is diversity on boards. So I was gonna say, is it bad to have 4 women? Like, do we want 2 men and 2 women to own the Storm? But I liked your reframe of kind of looking at WNBA as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's just this team and a few others that have women owners.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome.
I agree. So along with this, so Sue played basketball and is now on the ownership team. And it kind of made me think about boards in terms of people that have worked for that company and then work their way up and then eventually sit on the board. I don't feel like that's a common path. So do you have opinions on when somebody has experience in that company and then working at the board? Like when you're advising women about which board to sit on, do you advise them to, are you seeing them going to companies that they've already worked for? Or what does that look like?
Once in a while, that can happen. I think smaller companies, sometimes the leadership team will sit on the board. Usually people don't join the boards of companies they've worked for. It doesn't look that good if the CEO is essentially, and the CEO often has a big say in the selection, is choosing his former people. It doesn't have a good look, which is to say it can happen. I think my advice to women is, of course, to go to that CEO if they have and say, who can you introduce me to? What other companies can I contribute to in this space?
Yeah, I often see, especially with like startups, that the board is really made up of just the investors. So you have these people that maybe don't have experience in whatever industry it is, but they just have a lot of money. And are you seeing that a lot on boards too?
Yeah, I think smaller company boards, I think we were saying, is the founders and the funders. And so the founders have experience in the company. The funders have experience in making money. And so their goal is for the company to make money. And so sometimes they have experience, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come from big VC firms that kind of can bring in consultants in different areas to help their clients, or maybe even the VC might have an incubator to help with small companies to do better.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's interesting to have 4 co-owners. I'd be very curious to know their outline of roles and expectations, because that seems very hard for all 4 people to make decisions all the time. So wouldn't you guess they probably have different responsibilities and different decision making?
I think so. I think at least 2 of them, and maybe 3 of them, other than Sue, have worked together for quite a while.
That's true. Yeah.
And
so we'll see.
They've been involved in basketball for a while.
Yeah. So they've got it figured out. They don't need my help. Okay. The next one.
Of course they do.
The next one is Amazon stock prices. So this article has so many numbers in it. And really the point is that Amazon is making money. If you're not in the corporate world, there's 4 quarters in a year. It's every 3 months. So this is Q1. So that's why this episode has a little bit more of a lean on revenue numbers. So they come out and they say Q1, we're having a record number of revenue this Q1 compared to other years. I think it's at $143 billion. And revenue is before they've taken out all the expenses, but still, wow. And their share prices are up. Things are going great. A lot of it is likely because of their AI products that are selling well. And people have hope in the future for AI products to continue to do well. So my question to you is the rumor true that the board only cares about making shareholders happy?
I think that is a large part of a board's job.
Yeah.
Is to ensure shareholder value.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a trend to look beyond that to stakeholder value. But shareholder value is important. I think it's important to note that Amazon did divest of some businesses that weren't doing so well. I think its healthcare business was one. And they've cut costs in other ways, sort of to preserve their business.
Yeah. And the other thing, I guess we were talking about, speaking of stocks, talking about, this is not my strength, dividends and buybacks. So there's one thing where other companies, if the Amazon can buy the stocks back from some of the people that own stock, and then those people can get cash, and then also getting cash through dividends. So you were saying that a lot of other companies are doing that, but Amazon's
other big tech companies are offering dividends, and Amazon never has. And so given that they're doing so well, and it wasn't predicted that they would do this well, it's actually a better showing than they predicted. Now there might be pressure for Amazon to pay dividends to its shareholders.
Yeah. So this article kind of brings up, it's hard to read because I know about all the tech layoffs. We've been covering these tech layoffs, and then you see them coming out with, ta-da, we're doing great financially. How have you seen other boards handle that dance between doing layoffs and also showing high revenues? How would you advise somebody on a board like that?
Wow.
How do you solve that? Or I guess, have you seen that happen and have boards kind of struggle
I
with
think
that?
what happens is it isn't. So let's just say a company has 100 employees and 10 of them are working in one area that isn't doing so well, and 10 of them are working in a completely different area that is. So it's not so easy to pull the 10 people with certain skills over to the area that's not doing so well. And so you've seen tech companies sort of close off areas that aren't doing as well. I think that's tapered off. I'm hearing from my clients that people are hiring again. For a while, they just weren't in the tech sector.
Okay.
I had a client from Amazon today, and I was like, what do you think about this? I'm going on this podcast. And she just said, cost cutting. She said, it isn't that they're earning so much more. It's that they've been really careful in cutting costs. And of course, as an employee, she's also a shareholder.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. We can sit here and be like, well, why did you lay off all these people if you're doing so well? But then you can say, well, we're doing so well because we laid off all these people. So I don't know. Okay. Our third story is...
It's a piece of it, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Our third story is REI. REI, they reported a loss of a little over $300 million in 2023. The revenues were about 3.7 billion in 2023. So they're only down just about 2%, which to me, when I read that makes me feel like they've got a lot of expenses. And this is the second year in a row that they've not turned a profit. If they're bringing in 3.7 billion, but they're still losing 300 million, I'd be curious to see what's going on there.
And they continue to open new stores. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
One reason Amazon has done so well is because they've really sped up deliveries. They, people can, I don't know if you do, I can get things overnight that I want and I order them. And a lot of REI's investment is to sort of warehouses where they can get people their items within 2 days. So they just built this warehouse in Tennessee. I think retail is a tough business. And REI continued to basically give its owners, its customers are its owners.
Yeah, for those not familiar, REI is technically a co-op. So they have 24 million members who are technically owners of the company. I can't remember what it costs per year. But another company was PCC Markets here in Seattle. A little bit of an unusual, or uncommon, I should say, setup for companies. But they're citing part of why they've got this loss is that they have to return some of their earnings to their members, to their owners. They pay them back, right? So
they paid out $200 million.
Oh, was that it? $200 million? Okay. Wow. The other reason they are citing is because of hourly wage increases. And so they laid off 300 full-time employees and then hired 1,300 part-timers, which I get. I get it. If you're REI, you're doing like if you're hemorrhaging money, like of course you're going to try and have cheaper labor.
And they raised wages too.
Yeah.
They raised wages on the people they kept so that they could give fairer wages. I'm a real proponent of REI and co-ops because they're mission driven.
Yeah, that's true.
They're mission driven.
Yeah, and they're motivated to work for their members and their owners.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, like you said, they're still planning to open 10 more stores this year. It sounds like they're kind of in the whole, you got to spend money to make money situation. So they're still opening stores and they're probably trying to get deliveries sooner. If you were do you have advice, or like if you were on the board, or advising somebody on the board, what kind of questions would be coming up in this discussion of this is 2 years in a row we're losing revenue? What kind of discussions would be happening in that room?
What are we doing?
What are we doing here?
What can we do differently? What's the strategy here? What, brick and mortar versus online? Who are our partners?
Yeah.
How can we raise our profile?
Do you know the REI board? Do you know people on that?
I'm not dead sure who the current members are. I have known many people who have been on that board, and They're just always great people.
Yeah. Do you know if they've had, I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you know if they've had a diverse board in the past?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
REI diversified its board way, way, way before
Really?
anybody
Okay.
else did. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The OGs.
Yeah, well, Sally Jewell,
Oh, yeah, I
if
know
you
her,
think of Sally, she was very instrumental in diversifying REI in general, the leadership team, and a very visionary woman.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Ready for next story?
Next story.
It goes quick. Okay. I'm going to say Doxo. I couldn't figure out if it's Doxo or Doxo, but I'm going to say Doxo. Doxo. The story here is that the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, is suing a Seattle-based company. Actually, they're Bellevue, but you get it. Seattle-based bill payment company called Doxo. The company, from what I can understand when I was looking at their website, is that essentially you log into your Doxo account, and then you can pay all your bills through that. So you can pay your electric bill, your cable bill, whatever it is, in one setup, and then it looked like that you didn't have fees to be able to pay from there. And it was all set up to enhance the pay experience, etc. The FTC is saying, well, you deceived consumers by using web design tricks. So essentially, if you Googled your electric company, Doxo would be like the first line item. Then you'd click into, or if you were on your electric bill page, there'd be an ad for Doxo right there that looked like you'd be paying your bill. So it's hard to explain on a podcast the exact tricks that they were using, but essentially they were confusing people, and they got tons and tons of complaints from both users and billers. In terms of the numbers here, we're looking at 10 million users and 120,000 billers. So this isn't a small company. Let's see, the co-founders. So Steve Shivers and Roger Parks are co-founders that are being named in this lawsuit. When I Googled, I found a page that said there was a third co-founder, Mark. I don't know why he's not involved, but we're going to kind of maybe stick to just Steve and Roger. Yeah. So the company was founded in 2008. I feel like if they had a board, I can't find if they have a board or not. So my question to you is, do they have to report that they have a board? Is it required?
If they're a private company, no.
No. Okay. So maybe they do, maybe they don't. I can't find it online. If they did have a board, let's say, don't you think they should have caught this before the FTC? Like, don't you think the board would be like, hey guys, this feels sketchy?
Boards are about oversight and foresight, and doing something that would raise the eyebrows of the FTC is probably never a smart move.
Yeah.
And so, I think you did look up, and they had a number of prominent funders.
Yes, I could find their investors. I don't have this pulled up right now, but yeah, a handful of different Oh, here we go. It's Sigma Partners, Jackson Square Ventures, MDV, and Bezos Expeditions, the Amazon founders investment firm.
So I'm guessing they would have had some sort of a board.
Yeah, with those
they're,
investors.
Just to manage the funding and founding. And the funders are, generally want to make sure their money is being spent wisely. So there's generally a board. Yeah.
So this company was founded in 2008. Do you think at what point do companies create a board? Would you say it's from the start with this much funding, or do you think it kind of ranges?
I think it kind of ranges. I had a female founder say to me, running a prominent Seattle company, why should I have a board? Because often it means, giving away a bit of equity or paying people. Why don't I just have advisors? And she had bootstrapped that company, so she wasn't taking money from anyone. So no reason for her to answer to anyone.
It's true. And I mean, worst case scenario, sometimes you can have a board that takes you, the founder, CEO, out of the company. Yeah. Because they technically supersede you. So why put yourself in that situation? Yeah,
and often boards do that because often the founder, creative person that came up with the idea isn't the best person to run the company.
True. Yeah. So this kind of brings up, this is a private company. And I think you have some stats on diversity in private companies.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
In a study, the Him for Her Crunchbase study, which studied large private company boards, basically found that women held only 1 of 7 seats.
1 of 7 in private companies.
1 of 7 in private company boards. If you start to look at public company boards, then you're looking upwards of 20%, and even in the large ones, upwards of 30%. But, you're still, even in those companies, the numbers are very low. But 1 in 7 is really low. And you go in certain industries, there are no women.
Yeah.
And so I think where it comes up here is, I did that study way back when. That was like 2014 when I did that first study. And that was what people said. What women did differently is they want things done well, and they want no conflicts of interest, and they
So this
would look out for something like this.
Right, because it kind of brings up the role of morality a little bit. Was this just genius marketing, or were they actually deceiving people? And, if I don't know what their board is made up of. Maybe there are women there. But you were saying that women tend to have less morality.
Well, I think that they tend. No,
I don't want to say that. That's such a blanket statement to men.
Yeah, it's such a blanket statement, and there are many. They're amazing.
Conflicts of interest.
They're amazing men. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think women tend to watch out for that stuff and be less inclined to go for the big win. To think about people. To think about the consumer.
Yeah.
In this case, what about the poor consumer? And so, there's that, just thinking about the people. And then strategically, do you really want to risk the company over this? And so it's like somebody didn't rein in
the marketing team,
the marketing team. Or whoever it was. Yeah. There was not enough oversight.
We also don't know how much the board knew. Did they actually see the websites? Were they just like looking at the numbers? Great, you guys are successful. I'm going to turn my blind. We don't know.
Sometimes a funder board is looking at the numbers.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along to they're just being sued. Not just. They're being sued right now, so I don't know the final. We'll figure out if they are held responsible or not, but we'll figure that out later. Okay, the final story is Downtown Properties owe $16 million for the waterfront. So I didn't know this. I knew about the waterfront project, obviously, but I didn't know exactly how it was being funded. The waterfront project costs about $650 million. It is kind of redoing, the Seattle waterfront downtown. It's starting to look very beautiful, but it is expensive. It's partially funded by a special tax on 6,000 downtown properties. This tax is called the Local Improvement District, and that was passed in 2019. In addition to this tax is city dollars and private donations, but we're going to be focused a little bit more on the tax for this story. So what it meant is that for these 6,000 downtown properties, they owe a certain amount over the course of a handful of years. So between 2022 and 2041, they owe some money. And then, so this came out in 2019. This is before the pandemic. So 7 owners, collectively they own about 20 properties. They sue the city saying, hey, now, I don't think that evaluation is right. 16 million, I don't think that's right. So I think they end up winning that case, and then the city appeals it. So they win the case, and then they say, okay, the city, you owe the money back. And then the city appeals it, and they win. That's the article that came out, is saying, no, actually, the properties do owe the 16 million. And there's what I found interesting about this article is I was kind of like, yeah, that is kind of messed up. They didn't account for the pandemic, and these poor businesses, they can't afford that. And things have changed. And then I dove a little deeper and realized that the total dollar amount between 2022 and 2041 is just under $1,600 per company. So this makes me feel like it's more about the principle of the matter, I think, from these companies, because I don't want to say $1,600 is a little bit, but over the course of that many years. What are your thoughts?
And I don't know. I'm unabashedly pro waterfront, pro Seattle, and their property values are going to go up much more than $1,600 to have this beautiful, beautiful waterfront at their feet.
And some of these places are like hotels and restaurants and things like that I would imagine they're going to make more than $1,600
exactly
in the course of however many years that is.
Exactly. And I don't know, it's such a nice, downtown Seattle has taken such a hit. It's just so beautiful to see the waterfront turning into what it always should have been.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear a little bit more from the owners that sued and kind of understand their reasoning a little bit more, but from an outside perspective.
One of them is Marriott Hotels.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, they're going to get some traffic.
I think they're going to get some traffic, yeah.
And like I said, it's not just being funded by this tax. So you've got private donations and things like that. From the article, it says they still are $200 million left to fundraise. So I think they're working on getting that.
Yeah, I think Melinda Gates gave it $10 million, and I think McKinsey gave it $10 million.
Yeah, I think it's getting donations from everywhere. So I like the story because I think it really shows the impact of the business community that not everybody knows about, and the partnership between the business community and the city of Seattle. So I like it. I'm sorry that they didn't win, but I like that we're getting a waterfront. So that's the end of the news. So that's all we got for articles, but I wanted to give you a chance. Is there anything that you want to plug? Anything you want the audience to know?
Yeah. My Women Board Director Development Program runs June 13th and 14th at the Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. Are you a woman that would like to sit on a board of directors? Come to my 2-day program. It's really amazing.
Open to anybody and any ages, anybody?
I think it's open to people who are a step or two away from actually stepping onto a company board.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
And I'm the admissions committee, so.
Oh. Yeah. So if I email you, you'll let them in.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, Cate, thank you so much for joining me and taking the time. It's been so fun to reconnect with you and how far we've both come from 5 years ago. So thank you so
Rachel,
much.
Maybe you need to come to my program.
Maybe. All right. Thank you. This has been The Weekly. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at theweeklyseattle@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.